105.1 FM. It's Friday, 19th of April, and the time has now just gone 10 o'clock. Welcome to Mother's Planet, a show where there is always something to talk about in a productive and beneficial way. I'm your host, Neelam, and joining me today is my guest, Sister Fahima. Now, I believe she has joined. We are just going to get her to log on and join me shortly. Sister Fahima is a broadcaster and relationship coach, and I will get her to formally introduce herself a little later in the show. But first, hopefully, we should be able to hear her. There we go. I think so. Yes. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How are you? I hope you can hear me well.
I can, yes. Just if you could slightly maybe turn your mic up a little bit louder, but I can hear you.
Okay.
How are you this morning?
Well, alhamdulillah, I'm very well. Thank you so much for the invite. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you taking the time out to join me because I know, Fahima, you've been extremely busy over the last few weeks, and we will touch base on that, how busy you have been. But Fahima, how have you found post-Ramadan? Are you struggling to wake up?
It is very straining, but I'm quite used to a routine. So for me, it's always on the go, regardless of Ramadan or not. I have a
Yes.
very strict regimen and routine, anyways.
Oh, wow, mashallah, you are doing really good. I don't know. I think I'm calling it post-Ramadan trauma because I am struggling. It's amazing because throughout all of Ramadan, I was fine. I was able to get up at my suhoor time. I was getting up earlier as well and dealing with whatever I needed to deal with. And now I'm literally having to kick myself out of bed, and I'm finding it very hard to wake up in the morning. So I'm going to need some of your energy, I think, Fahima, this morning. So I'm not sure if many of the listeners can back me up here and say that they're feeling the same, but it's total exhaustion. And this crazy weather does not help. We've had sun, hail, and wind all in one day. So it's my neighbour and I have concluded it and decided to call the weather menopausal because we think it's very menopausal at the moment. Yeah, I'm hoping that it finds its balance and that we can. So listeners, yep, I hope you are all tuned in this morning in this dark and gloomy weather. So Fahima, you are connecting from London. How's the weather in London?
It's exactly the same, dark and gloomy. But it's really important that we do understand that we can let our external environment sort of control us. And in psychology, it's called the locus of control, whether you can let the external factors and environment control you, or you can rise above it. It hasn't been so many years until COVID, where a lot of people, actually, there were a group of people that in that time, where some were very much, obviously lost their jobs, but then it actually created sort of like an innovation where they can actually step out of that normal, comfortable environment and actually show themselves up so differently. So we can always blame, the weather, end of Ramadan, not feeling spiritual, but really important, and that's part of my work, is to not let those external factors, if it's negative, to actually create that meaning as negative and actually have that impact on you every single day.
Absolutely, and I think you put that beautifully there, Fahima. Fahima, I've just been told by the tech team that your voice is slightly a little bit lower, so I don't know if you have a mic or if you can just maybe bring your mic a little bit closer to yourself when you're speaking, just so that the team can hear you well. I can hear you, but I think it's technically not going through correctly. So
Okay, I'll try and be a bit louder, and I brought the mic
yeah, I
close.
think that's the thing. I think you're going to have to be a bit louder. So I won't be offended. You can shout at me this morning.
No
So,
problem.
listeners, we are live on air, reaching out to our listeners through the airwaves at Inspire FM 105.1 FM. You can also connect in through TuneIn via the Inspire FM new and improved webpage, and also watch the show live on the Inspire FM Facebook page, where you must leave a thumbs up, and also you can leave or share any comments around today's topic. As always, I am taking in WhatsApp or text messages on the studio number 07779 481 822. So you can share any questions that you have for my guests this morning on that number, and that's via text or WhatsApp. Now, I'm going to crack on straight away with the show because we've got a lot to cover this morning. So, my guest and I this morning will be discussing marriage. Now, understanding the successes and sadly their failures as well. But before I delve into my questions, Fahima, can I please get you to formally introduce yourself to the listeners this morning?
Well, thank you again for inviting me. It's really important that we have these conversations. And I am a life coach, but actually, a lot more than that behind the scenes, where I have been studying human mind and behavior for the last 8 years. And I have non-stop sort of like, qualified in sort of like not just my coaching journey, which was about 2 years. I've also qualified in relationship and couples coaching, existential positive psychology, business coaching, as well as, certified in CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, neuro linguistic programming, NLP. And I just recently completed my master's in psychology and neuroscience of mental health. So I help people in the community as well as businesses and schools with regards to transformation of any challenges using the latest sort of studies in psychology and neuroscience. And I also am a broadcaster and TV presenter myself on several different channels, a contributor now on mainstream TV to sort of discuss any sort of current social and political interview and make sure that we represent and we have our say. And I'm very, very out there when it comes to contribution on debating, especially when it comes to sort of these very taboo topics at the very moment. So that's in a nutshell.
Wow. All I can say is well done you, Fahima, because that's super amazing. So in all of this, Fahima, you are also balancing a family life?
Yes, actually, I am a single mom and I have two young boys, and it's been a while since I've been alone with them. And I've managed to do all of that on my
Wow.
own, alongside the studying, working, and helping others. And they are absolutely amazing in their own mindset. So, experience matters, and I use everything of my own. But I think, having that education, academic, and using it on your own as well as going out there is so important. And there is a stigma around everything that I stand for. And I break down all of those barriers, whether it's in psychological studies or the stigmas and sort of like, misrepresentations within the community and outside the community. So that's why I stand very strongly on many, many views.
Yeah, wow. And how old are your boys?
At this very moment in time, they are 14 and 16.
Mashallah. Wow. Wow. So they're not boys, they're like your little men really, aren't they?
Yes, but I've been alone with them since when they were 4 and 6. So it's been a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So yes, they're going to be your right hands, I guess. So it's amazing. And I think I'm sure they are very proud of their mum to where she is standing today. And so okay, so Fahima, you mentioned relationship coach, and I think I wanted to elaborate on that today and just discuss a little bit more about why you decided to go into that kind of field and what that field actually means.
That's just one of the fields that I'm in. A lot of people have a niche and I don't. It just so
Mhm.
happens to be the most important topic that most people come to, even if they
Mm.
come to me as a professional for business coaching. Because I'm sort of like qualified and certified in almost every area you can think of, it does come back to their relationships. So when they come to me for business coaching, we realize that a lot of people also, they can be very successful in their business, but if once they actually are falling in that, it does seep through that the fact that their own relationships at home actually is the cause of it. And it does go if it goes unattended for so many years, then it can actually affect their lives in their businesses. So when I go back into the coaching, that's what happens. And obviously it's something that in the Muslim community we don't speak about. So I'm known as a relationship coach, but actually I do so much more. But that is obviously the topic of discussion because it does affect everyone, even if they don't want to speak about it out loud. So I've had shows on this, and recently, just been the last 4 years, every single day of the week, I have had shows on relationships on British Muslim TV, addressing every single issue you can think of, and also about topics that are really, really uncomfortable. And when it comes to relationships, remember, there's romantic relationships and there's relationships with yourself, with your, with your siblings, colleagues. So relationships is huge anyways. When people talk about relationships, they just assume it's only romantic, but actually your relationships at home is really important. And because I'm also single, a lot of people think, well, you're not in a relationship, how can you give relationship advice? The thing is, I actually get along with people I don't like and don't like me, and I think that speaks more volumes anyways. And a lot of people are in relationships. That does not mean that they actually are successful in their relationships. I'm only going to be in a relationship if I feel I'm successful. And just because I'm not in one does not mean that I have no idea as to how it goes, because I'm in relationships with people that cannot communicate, but I will create that communication and that space. And that's what the difference is.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I think you touch based on it. But yes, everyone when you say the word relationship, you assume it's a man and a woman, and it's a relationship that's going to be physical, or have some love involved in it. But actually, there are many relationships, and I think the key relationship here is which alhamdulillah, mashallah, it looks like you have completely found, is a relationship with yourself, because you need to accept yourself and know yourself and identify your own needs and know where you are as an individual. And do you think, just based on that, actually, do you think, Fahima, that it's quite difficult? That's quite a difficult thing to do, where you are trying to identify your own relationship, and and this could be with other people. This could be with we're Muslims, so our relationship with God, how we represent. Do you think it's quite a difficult characteristic to identify and say that we have reformed, we understand our own relationships?
Well, we can talk about this from a psychological point of view, but because we're on a Muslim channel, and because I
Mm.
actually do coach not just in my Muslim community but
Mhm.
outside, and having a space here, I would say, to be honest, the relationship with yourself and everything in life for me comes down to your faith. And the more
Mhm.
closely you connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I feel, then whatever you go through, that does bring that identity, that self awareness, and everything that we discuss in psychology and everything I've learned. I can relay it directly into my faith. It's just that people don't know how to sort of say that out loud. We
Mm.
relay science and Islam very easily, but we don't relay psychology and Islam very easily. So everything that I've learned, I've also already been brought up with. If you are, and the thing is, we can't just go to madrasa from a young age and stop and maybe
Mm.
teenagers or whatever. You need to continue that education, and that's what's failing right now, and that's where the problem lies, unfortunately. And that's what I've always discovered. And my learning, yes, I went to madrasa up to a certain point, but my actual learning came to when I was a teenager. I was asking even further more questions, and I took up, that sort of like realization to ask myself questions externally, existentially even, and read books around Islam and knowledge at the age of like 14, 15, 16. And literally that's when I put on the hijab when I was 18, and
Yeah.
nobody in your family wears it. And and it's absolutely fine. But I've actually become my own person, and that self-awareness,
Mm.
whatever it is, only comes from the fact that I actually try as much as I can to practice my faith and understand my faith. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's amazing. And it's lovely the way to hear your brief story there about your hijab journey and you finding your faith, and that is again through the knowledge that you have obtained and what you have found and learned and understood and studied. So, you know, um, listeners, if you're tuned in, especially those women out there that think, right, had my children, education's finished. No, we have to continue. This is the starting point, I believe. So I think this is where we should, definitely keep striving to learn. And I think you're a great example of that, Fahima, where you have, being a mum and a single mum and continuing your journey of education and not stopping. So, thank you so much for sharing that experience. So you said that in your recent interviews that you've had and a couple of shows that you've done, it's around relationships and a marriage. It seems to be quite a hot topic at the moment. So in your experience, do you think there's been a rise in um, divorces or a decrease? I know post-pandemic there was quite a peak of people separating and going their own ways, but now as we're slowly coming out of that, I think 4 years later, would you say that things are coming to a balance now, or is it still the same?
It's funny you asked that question because I was asked that on the BBC, and I was actually even during COVID speaking about this on the mainstream, and everyone kind of blamed, the pandemic for the actual sort of downfall of marriages. But if anything, there was some that actually got closer and some that actually, separated. And I think that situations are not there to make a difference to your actual outcome, but it's there to open up the space, because when you're in your family, maybe people that were working so much didn't actually really get to either appreciate their family or realize that this is not what I want. So it wasn't the pandemic that caused the marriage failures. It was the actual space that it provided for you to actually address it. And that's what the main thing is. And so in life, things happen in that way. And relationships are very volatile at this moment. And it's for various reasons, because the reasons why we got married in the first place, even 10, 15 years ago, or a couple of decades ago, is very different now, as the roles of women have changed, as the level of tolerance has changed. Some good's not good. Some obviously, where maybe abuse was tolerated, now it's not, or others where, a lot of higher expectations are there unnecessarily. And now it's something that, which is not good for marriages as well. So I can see it from both sides, but there is definitely an increase in divorce, unfortunately. And there's many people that have even had marriages for so many years that have now
Mm.
broken, and there's ones that have just started and they just can't even get off their feet. And within months or years, or a couple of years or less, they are breaking down. So there is such a huge spectrum as to why this is happening.
Mm.
And I probably need to show on its own just to go through that. But just briefly, I would say again, it really just come down to the not knowing yourself, not knowing how to actually filter and vet, and also when you're in a long term relationship, not knowing that at the end of the day, it is continuous work. And I guess a lot of the times as well, and we have to admit this, and I always say this out loud, a lot of it comes down to a lot of cultural norms and beliefs that does not align with our faith. And now we are opening up to the point that, what, this is not what our belief in. And sometimes, we are breaking our marriages because we don't have the actual Islamic knowledge to go across and say, this is what we need to do. And I'm not saying we should tolerate sort of extreme circumstances, but we need to turn more into understanding what our roles and responsibility is. And most people think that our marriages is, a movie, when actually in Islamically, when I sit with scholars, they actually translate marriage as a shared struggle, because this is life. Life is a continuous test, and just because you get married doesn't mean that you're going to have that roses all the time. And that's the issue. We do not have the concept of understanding what marriage is. And then also we expect that somebody else should fulfill the need, which is, lacking within us, which we need to fulfill ourselves on our own, not put that reliance and dependence on our partners.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't help when you've got all these films and posters out there where they're showing happy couples in in a stable relationship, and it's all flowers and love hearts and everything. But in reality, that's not the case, and I think people then slowly start building an expectation that I thought when I get married, that's going to happen to me, and I thought that was going to be, and I think that could be also, it's having that expectation of I'm going to also be in that same relationship and have exactly what that picture, poster, film, whatever it is that they've been influenced by, is having, and that's going to be exactly what I'm mimicking here as well. So I guess I wanted to mention here, I spoke to a friend a while back, and she said that she's a beautician and she was treating a lady, and this lady was Muslim, born and raised here, and she's looking for somebody to marry her son. And the first thing she said to the girl that was treating her was that I'm trying to find a girl for my son, but can you believe the girls of today, they don't want to work, and I don't want my son to be the sole breadwinner. I want them to work as well. It should be a partnership, shared thing. And when she'd finished with the client, she said to me, I was fuming because I was thinking, poor girl, whoever it is that's going to marry her son, the expectation, the bar is raised so high. But I don't know, I had mixed opinions about it, because I thought, what's your take on it first?
I just think that, each case scenario is very different. For some
Mm.
people, if that's what they want, there are girls out there that won't want to work, but we need to be realistic as to where we are and who we are. And at the end of the day, Islamically, it is the role of the man to provide, right? So at the end of the day, we need to obviously understand that. But then we have certain women nowadays that at the end of the day, they also want to work out of choice, but it's not something that they should be told to do. So there's a balance, okay? And that's not the real reason where firstly, parents also need to wake up. As much as we need to respect them, unfortunately, they also need to come back to understanding that this day and age is different. And it's not out of disrespect, but they need to understand what the requirements are for marriage. And it's not there for either just finance or whether it's there for the fact that that person is, good looking or all of those very, very, very low level of wants and needs. It is definitely a need and a consideration, but in Islam as well, how are you operating? There are different types of way in which you are operating, even as a soul. Are you at the low level where it's just, the everyday stuff and your needs and what you want? Or is it there to actually be something of meaningful at a higher level? So we have to understand this. And when we understand this as Muslims, practicing our faith, and when we say practicing our faith and we want a brother or sister to practice their faith, it's like we read Quran, we pray. That's just your obligation. And that is the bare minimum and basics. But how is that relayed in between your salah? And what is it bringing to the table in between that time? How is it showing up in your characteristics? How is it showing up in your work? How is it showing up to the treatment of others? People don't understand that. If you're looking for marriage, you need to know that there's someone there that is a person who has that mind, body, heart, soul, and spirit of understanding what is their meaning and purpose in life. And even if they had all the money in the world, if tomorrow, like we had another pandemic, could be taken away, so what, you divorce that person? Come on. Or they have an illness, or they have something that happens, that does not, come in the form which is obviously we know is not planned. So we cannot have those kind of dictations of what it should be and those box ticks. Nowadays, it's literally looking for a partner. It's like, a job CV. And you see that all the time. And it's really sad to know. And I know that it's very difficult because we have a different layout of looking for people, but we are not robots, and we fluctuate and we evolve, we develop, we grow, we decline even, whether it's emotions. And at the end of the day, we expect people to keep at a, equilibrium when we ourselves are not at an equilibrium, but we expect the other. And when we're making these demands, are we looking in the mirror and fulfilling that first? To expect that from somebody else. So again, it's an understanding of life, of your faith, and of how everything is. And it does not make any real sense to me at all. I see where she's coming from, but again, it's a very low vibration, very low frequency, and a very low level of thinking. And if that's all that is, it's very easy to satisfy if you want to find someone. But then what about the rest of it? So again, when people come to me, they're scared of my coaching because I am known as boot camp coach, and I'm going to give it to you the way it is. It's very different to counseling, though it's very similar. But I've had hundreds of hours of training, and not just from one kind of therapy or sort of like technique or strategy. I bring it all together, and obviously with the faith that's behind it, I think it really does show differently. And if people really want transformation, it's hard. And you've got to look deep and take accountability and responsibility. And a lot of the times when I just even have one conversation with somebody, it can change their entire lens because they actually have that realization. And you are going to get a boot camp coach coming for you. So you need to be prepared.
No, but absolutely. And I think that's the way to be, Fahima, because I think sometimes when it's buttered up, or when I've known a lot of coaching that's gone through and they've delved into your childhood, and the onus and the blame has gone on to someone else, and then that sort of alleviates, oh, it wasn't me, it was that person that dictated. But actually the crux of it's yourself, because it was how you reacted to that situation and how you took on that situation, or it was the steps and actions that you took on yourself. So I think that's very important. So listeners, if you have just tuned in this morning, I have lovely Fahima with me this morning, who is a relationship coach and a list of other things as well. Mashallah, she is a woman with many hats, who wears many hats, many talents, and a continuously educating woman who we could really take some inspiration from. If you do have any questions on our topic today, which is on the successes and failures of marriage, please do message in onto the studio number 07779 481 822. Now we are going to go into a break in about a minute's time, so just got 60 seconds to the break starts. But I just wanted to have a question for you to think about in the break. Fahima, about when somebody is looking for a spouse, how I think the fear thing now everyone is feeling is the fear of what if this doesn't work. And I think that's something that everybody worries about when, and especially when now we're that generation where we are looking for our children to get married, and people are going to be even super sensitive about everything, that I can't let my son go through this, I can't let my daughter go through this. And I think many people of this generation have that fear in their hearts about what if this doesn't work out. So I'm going to let you think about that question, and we will come back to that. But for now, listeners, we are going over to a short commercial break. Do keep those messages coming in, but for now, go refill your hot drinks, cold drinks, whatever it is that you're having with us this morning, and join us after a short commercial break. Assalamu alaikum.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Omar Regan.
This is Moses the Comic.
This is Rizwan Hussein.
This is Baba Ali.
This is Nabil Abdul Rashid, and you're listening to Inspire FM. Inspire yourself to listen to Inspire FM on 105.1.
Did you see that guy on TV?
What, that no comment guy?
Yeah, he was sick. What was his name?
I think it was Atiq Malik.
Yeah, Atiq Malik of Liberty Law Solicitors. Atiq Malik heads up the criminal law team at Liberty Law Solicitors, specialising in everything from serious crime down to road traffic offences.
To find out more or for a free telephone consultation, call 01582 459955.
Liberty Law, there when you need us most.
On the authority of Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, who reported that the Messenger of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "He who believes in Allah and the last day should either speak good or remain silent."
हज़रत अबू हुरैरा रज़ी अल्लाह ताला अन्हु से रवायत है, नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, जो शख्स अल्लाह और यौम आखिरत पर ईमान रखता है, वो या तो भलाई की बात कहे वरना खामोश रहे।
Assalamu alaikum. Abu Ayyub reported the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan then follows it with 6 days of fasting in Shawwal, it will be as if he has fasted for the entire year. This is narrated in Sahih Muslim. May Allah accept our good deeds, forgive our sins, and make us people of Jannah. Please remember the oppressed in your du'as. Ameen.
Luton's most luxurious venue for Asian weddings is now bigger and better than ever before. With 2 venues to choose from, Venue Central can provide the ultimate setting for your wedding. 2 huge venues, 1 high standard, right in the centre of Luton. Visit us online today at venuecentral.co.uk or call us now on 01582 451 767. Venue Central, affordable luxury in a central location.
Water is life. In many parts of the world, people struggle to access clean water for their daily needs. Muslim Charity is working to change that. Our water hand pumps provide access to clean water for families in need, helping to improve health, education and livelihoods. But we can't do it alone. With a donation of just £150, you can help us provide a water hand pump to a family in need. To donate, simply visit our website at muslimcharity.org.uk or call us on 03 000 111 786.
On the authority of Ibn Masud, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, the Messenger of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, none of my companions should convey to me anything regarding another, because I desire to meet every one of you with a clean heart.
हज़रत इब्न मसूद रज़ी अल्लाह ताला अन्हु से रवायत है, रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, मेरे सहाबा में से कोई शख्स किसी की कोई बात मुझ तक न पहुंचाए, इसलिए कि मैं इस बात को पसंद करता हूं कि मैं तुम्हारे दरमियान इस हाल में निकलूं कि मेरा सीना हर एक के बारे में साफ हो।
Oh, Hillary, I was going to use newspaper display advertising, but it costs £10 per inch.
And that's too expensive.
Oh, indeed it is. I want to sell a 10-foot ladder.
Oh, Roger, invest in an ear-catching advertising campaign on this radio station instead. It's a great way to tell people about your products and service.
For details, click on inspirefm.org, then advertise. From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 10:30.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Mother's Planet. It's Friday, 19th of April, and the time has now just gone 10:30. I'm your host, Neelam, and joining me on the show today is my guest, Fahima, who is a woman with many talents, I would say. I don't even know how to define you anymore, Fahima, actually. But on today's show, she's a relationship coach. And today we are talking about the successes and failure of marriage. Now, before the break, I asked Fahima the question about how this generation that is looking for the children to get married, they have a concern about how do we know this marriage is going to be a successful one and it's not going to be doomed. How what advice would you give?
I have loads. The first and foremost, coming from a background and faith, for me, it's very simple. Tawakkul, okay? Have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't have all the kind of like boxes ticked and ironed out. We have to put that trust in Him. And if someone does come to you, marriage is very simple. The fact that they are, off the faith and they're trying their best, and you just have to do that. And it's actually very simple, and we complicate it, and mainly through cultural and silly, very unrealistic expectations. So I'm just going to say it exactly how it is. But from a psychological point of view, I actually coach people when it comes to premarital coaching, and I've had many couples come to me, even if they are solicitors and professionals and junior doctors themselves, where they are very, very trained in their profession, but have absolutely no clue about relationships. And it doesn't matter, because when they are there with their potential partners and they've had issues, their parents will come to me and they're like, I don't know what's going on. We have a few sessions, and alhamdulillah, it's been absolutely amazing. And I have all these strategies. For example, we talk about the 5 love languages, which is, the way in which you'd like to be, in certain ways. Well, I've got the most, advanced 5 love languages when it comes to, for example, do you understand your partner's nervous system? Do they even know what that means? How do they deal in conflict? What do they actually understand when it comes to, sort of failures and things like that? So I have different love languages, which is much more deeper. And it actually gets to actually understand that person beyond that front that we put, even if it's for months and years, that you're getting to know that person in that courtship period. And you really understand that even if they have issues in the past, or they have some sort of like unresolved or unhealed wounds, you know how to pick up on it, and you can work on that, and it brings about the awareness for yourself and the others. I have got so many techniques. Like I said, a lot of people, they do coaching from a very small angle and a very short course, and I've done this where I've had several hours and gone on to other than coaching, like I said, separate, when it comes to relationship coaching, where I can coach couples, and like in a counseling session, but a lot more present and forward thinking, with techniques that will actually understand and open up that awareness about themselves. And studying human mind and behavior, we do need to understand ourselves, how we operate, how we behave, the kind of implications and impacts that has in our lives. Not to say that we have to blame it, it's just bringing about awareness so we can work with that. And the way in which we see things, there's this in psychology, there's another distinction called the perception map. And each one of us, we go through life where we have filters of how we actually receive information and how we filter that. Even in one family brought up by the same parents, the same values, they are all different. Why is that? Now, I understand that, and I know how to unravel and unveil that to a person. So when you have two strangers coming together, you can't expect to actually get along just because you have the same kind of like hobbies, interests, this, that, and the other. That for me is, again, so surface level. So when I work very deeply to make you understand from such a level where it's no blame, there's no sort of like problem with you. It's just the fact that you want to learn a different perspective on how humans operate, the way in which we programmed, and to reprogram it so that we can serve yourself and each other. Because obviously we do not have that awareness. We don't need to have a degree or a course. That's why I've done it, so that I can bring it to your sort of way. So for me, this is very simple. It's just that most people don't want to go through that process, and they obviously want to take accountability and responsibility and work on themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of, yes, absolutely, when people look for spouses, they look for common grounds, but actually, the saying opposites attract, it's, would you say it's true?
It doesn't matter, honestly. I think there's so many different characters that can come together, and I think it can happen in so many different ways. It just depends on which stage and sort of understanding and awareness you have in life. And even with that, again, it will change because your job might change you. You go through different phases. As we develop as children, our brains change. But our brains also are changing depending on what you read, what you are sort of like exposing yourself to as adults, and that can also make a difference. And I know the science behind that from from a neuroscience perspective. So the psychology is the mind, and the neuroscience is the actual brain, and the mind and the brain is very different. So when I go into the science and psychology of it, to understand that, you read new knowledge, you create new habits, you build new connections in your brain and new synapses. It will also help you from, having that sort of like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that, because you're creating new synapses from learning at an older age. But at the same time, that new learning is also helping you develop yourself. And like I said, I have so much content for Africa, to be honest. This is only touching the surface. And when I go into a session, you're learning so much about yourself that you'll be able to coach yourself and cope with these things, because this knowledge is literally is more than gem, to be honest.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like you said, yes, we could do a whole show around this, but inshallah in the future. But so the common, what seems to be the common areas of concerns when you are coaching couples? What seems to be I guess, as you say, every marriage is different, and every person that's come to you is probably coming with different issues. But there must be like a common ground. And what seems to be the common ground that comes forward to you? What do you find is the most common thing that is obviously causing this area of concern in their marriage?
Well, for new couples, obviously it's that expectation, and obviously being completely surprised. It's like when you have a child and you think, oh my God, what happened? I thought it was different, and it was, it was so easy. And again, it hits you like a brick, and you've got to be able to handle that. So that's why it's very important to have premarital coaching. So I guess it's this shock of that, unmet expectation when it comes to new marriages, and realizing that when you are with your parents, they tolerate a lot. And when you have another partner, they're going to test you, they're going to trigger you, and you're going to have to be able to deal with it. Because actually being in relationships actually opens up a lot of yourself that you weren't aware of before. Because sometimes parents and friends enable you, or they might ignore the fact and not know how to deal with the issues. But when you are faced with a partner every single day completely new, they don't know you, they don't know what triggers you, and it will come up. And when it comes to long-term relationships, the problem here is the fact that the spark is gone. And a lot of the times, apart from, say, extreme circumstances of abuse and things like that, which happens, I just think a lot of it, majority of the time, is just, both of them are just bored, and they don't see each other in the same way. And then they think it's a problem that they can't resolve, because they're not, satisfied in their marriage in every area they possibly can, and one's not putting the effort in. And that happens a lot in the South Asian communities, because a lot of the times they think once they've got them, that's it. And they don't have to do anything. They don't have to spend time. They don't have to make an effort. And the children come in, the works come in. But it's absolutely incorrect. Because when there's a football game and when there's a wedding, both that husband and wife that's so busy and don't have time, they'll have the best dress, and they'll go out and find the time for those things. So it's about the urgency. It's about the importance. It's about the priorities. And when you like somebody and you consistently like them, it's not about even loving them, because you like your friends when you go out with them. You don't like your partner over years. And that's the problem. You're not friends with them either. And as much as many different scenarios occur, unfortunately, a lot of them are very familiar with similar. So when I even put posts out, people think I'm talking about them. And all of my clients are very private and very confidential, but they're all experiencing the same things. And a lot of the time it's because they just don't understand their own need or the other person's need. They don't understand how life is. They don't want to accept it. And it's to do with a lot of things. And the main breakdown in marriages is that people are not willing to put in the work. And obviously the obvious is infidelity, betrayal, and abuse. So those are the extreme ones. But I think a lot of the times, the majority of marriages can be worked upon and can be built. And no matter what my situation is, I endorse families get together, being married, staying together, going through things, because community is only built through strong households. And that's what, unfortunately, we are coming against, especially living in the West. So we need to understand our role here is to build those communities strong and our families strong. Not everyone can be like me as well and hold it together. But I know how to teach people to do that on their own or in a family.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've kind of like answered my second question, which is, if a marriage is coming to you and it looks like it's failing, is it doomed, or is there hope for this marriage?
It depends on the situation. No marriage can continue unless two people are willing to put the effort in. And unfortunately, a lot of people do give up too quickly, too early, and they don't see it. So I try my best to make them see it. But if they want to not work at it, I actually do advise the other partner that at the end of the day, you cannot make someone be with you. And that is the worst position to actually be in. As much as I love and I do endorse marriages, and I do believe in my faith as to we have to be together, but then you have to consider the impact it also has on your children, if there is any, or on yourself. And Islamically, it is allowed, so there are reasons for it. And I work alongside scholars, and there's absolutely nothing wrong in you starting again. But I actually say, make sure you use every single bit of, exert every single bit of option before you get to that. Whereas most people, they don't. That's the other problem. And they go to it at the very end when there's a lack of love and mercy, so that when you go and, seek some sort of help, that's why I say when you're just about tolerating something, then go speak to somebody. Because at the end of the day, it's important to have it when you still have that love and mercy and compassion and empathy for each other. But when you're totally out of your depth, putting up and tolerating, then how is it easier for you to even get that help? And then they say, well, counseling doesn't work, this doesn't work. It's because you've left it too late as well. And you don't have that sort of mind of actually dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, we've talked about failed marriages and what could be potentially the issues around it.
That word failed.
I know. And I think the way I said it there.
It's only feedback, to be honest, because failure is something that, whether it's in business or marriage, it really does have a meaning where it puts people in a place where they cannot come back from. But when you look at it as feedback, that means, I did it that way then, and there's no regret, because that's what I knew at that moment in time. But I've learned better, and I've begun better, and now I can't change the past, because people live in regret and that can bring them down. People think that they were a failure and they don't pick themselves up. So that word for me is damaging in today's society. So I think it's more about knowing that a marriage just had its expirational date, like the season, right? And you can still move on. And I've seen very successful things happen to those people that have had, breakdowns in their relationships and really thrive. And like I said, I'm an example of that.
Absolutely right. We'll have to reword that word now in the show. But what does a successful marriage look like then?
That's the other thing. A successful marriage is continuous struggle. It's you continuously striving and not giving up on each other. It's not about having a pretty house and having that bank balance and posting on Instagram, those few second snapshots, and at the end not talking to each other. It's not liking each other, but saying, I'm still here for you. I'm not giving up on you. I'm still working out. That's what a relationship is about. People don't see it like that. They want the roses all the time. But even in your brain, there's a balance, that an equilibrium that we need to have, which is called homeostasis. And I keep saying this. We cannot have too much happiness, nor can we have too much sadness. It has to be an equilibrium. And that's how the brain balances. So when people think that we have to have that complete, even if about the way in which adults adapt, even if we had everything, and we've seen this in Hollywood, right? They have everything, but they have mental health issues. Why is that? It's because there's no balance in life. So Islam teaches us that life is a continuous struggle and it's a constant test. So when you're with a partner constantly struggling, but you're saying you're not giving up, you're saying I'm there for you, you say I'm standing for you. Yeah, your turn is to support me. The other one is going to support. And I don't mean just financial. I'm talking emotional. I'm talking about picking up the weight when someone's feeling down, depressed, whether it's after divorce, whether it's after even losing your job, whether it's just going through a midlife crisis. That's a successful marriage, is going through the hardships and not giving up on each other. That's what it is to me. And that's
Absolutely.
how I'm going to say it.
And I think that is key there. And I read the Quran this Ramadan, alhamdulillah, I managed to complete it, and I stopped in many parts where I was reading the translations to try and understand, because there were some ayahs that really touched me, and I thought, what does this mean? And throughout the Quran, it's mentioned about having everything in balance. And Surah Rahman is the key surah there, where it talks about balance, and it talks about Allah's favors upon us, and everything is given in balance to everyone. So I think this is something that, yes, as you say, we are happy, we are sad, but it's got to be balanced, and it's not about having an extreme of one and an extreme of the other. It's finding that balance, which isn't easy. And mashallah, I've been married for 18 years now, and you know, it's we're still trying to find that, you know, okay, that's something that he doesn't like, she doesn't like, you know, and we're still trying to find that balance, and we're still learning about each other. You know, there's things as we've aged, as our children have got older, that we're finding things out, that okay, my child behaved this way and it had that reaction on me. How did it affect my husband? How did it affect me? And then we're learning more about each other, because my way of disciplining is very different to the way my husband disciplines. But you know, we're both learning about each other still. So as you say, I don't think you'll ever reach that point in a relationship where you will say that, yep, I completely know my spouse, because you don't, you know. And I think when those couples that are blessed with children, our children will be those testing points for us, because as they age and grow older and experience life, those challenges will be thrown back to us, and then challenge us as a couple of how we're going to deal with this. So I think it's, you know, a continuous learning. The question I wanted to ask next was about when my generation, when I was getting married, it was almost like, you know, it's your duty, you must do this, and you know, and it was always at the back of my mind, oh, you know, as soon as I hit a certain age, I need to get married by that, and if I'm not, then I'm going to be deemed as, you know, sell by date expired, you know. It's just, and so the urge and the rush to get married was there. In recent times, I'm finding that children, you know, in their early children, I say, you know, young adults in their late 20s, early 30s, are still quite blasé about marriage, and not, you know, I'm not quite sure I've found the right one, or they're not interested. Why do you think this is the case?
You know, like I said, society has changed. There isn't that urgency of marriage because there's not much reliance on the other person. Women are working and they're much more independent. They're not just getting educated; they're actually in the workforce. And sometimes, you know, I always say that's really great to have, but it can be to your detriment. And as much as I'm someone who works, and at the end of the day, I do say that it's very difficult to balance the both, and we have to know our priorities in this life. And I don't think that we can have both at the same time. There will be moments where the woman, unfortunately, has to give up when it comes to whether it's having children, putting them first, and taking a break. And yes, it's not easy to come back into the workforce either, and certain careers don't allow for it, especially if you're high, sort of like, you know, professional, whether it's doctors and things like that. But we need to understand, again, you know, we are human beings with a natural need for connection. And no matter how successful you are, no matter how many people and women that I've spoken to who are highly successful, they are still not really satisfied, because at the end of the day, they do want a partner in life and they do want somebody, but they're not going to just settle for anyone. But that problem is not settling. And it's not the word that we should use, because their idea of not settling is not having someone with the same sort of bank balance as them. For me, my not settling is someone that does not have the right kind of understanding of life meaning and deen, and sort of, you know, a higher level of awareness and spirituality and your soul. Now that's the difference, you see. So I guess we need to dissect terminology of words and meaning, because it means differently to me compared to many people out there. And when I speak to many of my clients, I ask them many questions before they even, you know, answer any of the questions. I answer any of their questions because I want to understand what that meaning is to that actual word. So I guess that's the problem. And we do need to advise the youngsters that, you know, early marriage is preferable, because even if you want to make that mistake, it's better that you make it early. You can't predict it. At least you've had your children. Like I got married very young after uni. I've had my kids, and even though it didn't work out, not to, you know, my sort of like understanding that it was anything wrong in the marriage, but it just broke down. But at the same time, I'm able to still start again. So you've got to take a risk and a chance. You're never going to get it 100% perfect. And at the same time, you know, you've done and you've gone and done whatever duty and deen that you have. And if it comes again, it comes again. But if it doesn't, it's fine. And I know it's easier said than done, but there are more opportunities when you are younger as a woman. And you know, the pool is much wider. And we have to be realistic about that. Men can get married much older. They can have children a lot older. And even though women are getting married older and having children, I know that at, you know, 20s compared to 30s, having children is a very big difference to your body. And that is science and biology. And there's also, you know, yes, it's happening, but it's not easy. And I still want to have a career, and I still want to continue with my life. And I can do that when I start a family early. So that's how I look at it. And I think that Islam has that already in place, and it's not backwards. I think it's very smart.
Yeah.
I think it's very forward thinking, and I think you can have it all if you do it in that way. And even if it was to even happen where it doesn't work out, like in my case, I'm still living and I've got children now I'm growing up with myself, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. Do you understand? And if it was
Yeah.
to continue, that's another thing. So I think people are not getting that kind of advice, and they're not getting that guidance, and they do need to take opportunities. They don't need to look that deep when it comes to another human being, because again, no one's guaranteed. I can't guarantee me tomorrow. How can you guarantee somebody else?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I mean, you're slightly touch basing on my next question because I'm conscious of time. But for those that are tuned in this morning that are looking to get married, young boy, young girl, and they need this little kick up the backside. What kind of advice can you offer them when they are looking for a spouse? What could you say to them today?
Well, I have so many strategies really, but I just think having the intention is so important. Have the real intention for marriage, and you'll be surprised when we talk and translate it as the law of manifestation and attraction. But Islamically, it's about what you come to Allah asking for. He comes 100 steps forward to you. So make those intentions, make those du'as, do the actual work. Just like how you want to get successful in your business, in your career, in your university, make the intention, make the du'as. It's all there for you to do. And I don't just pray in Ramadan. I don't just open the Quran in Ramadan. I do it throughout every single day of my life. You've got to create these habits, and you've got to make sure that we are not just Muslim because of 5 times a day. We're not Muslim just because of Ramadan and any other thing. We're Muslim every single day, right? So we need to do that work, and believe me, it comes to you. And even with that struggle, it's not after struggle there's ease. If you translate the Quran, it's with hardship there is ease. So you've got to go through the whole entire fire and flames and come out at the same time okay with that belief, with that daily practice, and inshallah you'll be successful in every area. And with that you'll have challenges, but you'll be able to be okay with it. And don't have that sort of blueprint. We do not have a blueprint in life. I don't know where this comes from. I don't know who even said it should be that way. That's what I'm saying. When I talk about these things, think, where did that come from? Is it actually my culture, my actual school? Is it the movie that I watched yesterday? Was it actually? And then question that, and I think you'll come up with the answer yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fahima, for anyone that's tuned in this morning that is married and wants to try and find that happy go balance in their marriage, what advice could you give to those listening in as a relationship coach for a successful, happy marriage or balanced marriage? I think I'm scared to use the right word now. I don't know what to say.
No, I mean, these words are there just for us to dissect, because life is meaningless. When I say that, people get really upset. I'm like, because you create the meaning. It's not because we can't use that. We create the meaning of words. We create the meaning of life. And I just think for a successful marriage, I just think we need to dig deep within ourselves and understand our own faith. And if you get closer in connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can you go wrong? So then, it's not there even just pleasing your partner. Automatically you'll please your partner. Automatically you'll be doing the right things, because all the answers are there. For me, everything comes back to faith. That's all it is. It's very simple. And I think if we were to educate ourselves more, and I don't mean you have to do a course again, go read, go listen to a podcast, and don't listen to these boys and girl podcasts, which I've been on. Go to educated people, scholars, okay, and different scholars and different schools of thought if you really want to do your research, and go yourself and actually understand the real meaning of your faith. And I promise you, it's not even about having that balance. Balance is not even straight. Balance is up and down, as you mentioned before. When I say these things, there's so much more to go into it to explain, which unfortunately we don't have the time. But when I go into it, it's having balance, meaning that it's going to tip one time. It's going to go wrong the other. It's fine. Everything is okay. You are okay. We are all okay. Nobody's broken. Nobody's flawed. Nobody is wrong. Everyone is just a work in progress. So just give yourself a break. And most importantly, make sure that out of everything in life, you go back to your deen, your faith. That's all the answer that you need. Inshallah, everything will come to you.
Oh, such a beautiful message there, Fahima. And ultimately, we come alone, we go alone. So we are going to be judged and dictated on our own efforts and our work. So I think ultimately it's working on ourselves and improving our deen ultimately, and the connection that we have with Allah Most High. Now, Fahima, before I go, you have such a calm and relaxed demeanor about yourself, despite all the many things that you are juggling in your life. I'm sure there's some women listening in this morning that think I would love to hear some advice about how you keep so composed and, you know, as a working mum, you know, balancing the home life and balancing your, you know, business and life. How are you doing it?
I do have a routine. I meditate, I exercise, and even if it's for 10, 15 minutes, and it's a daily routine. I think, you know, having a sort of understanding of your emotional well-being and your mental health and taking care of that is it's so important. You cannot fill someone else's cup unless yours is full. And you've got to do that for yourself daily, even if you are in a marriage or even if you're alone. If I want to be there and show up for my clients or my children, or just, you know, in a business setting, I have to be on point. And people don't know what I did to leave that house, because I will never show it, but I've done it. But it will take time for me to meditate. And I know there's another, you know, sort of misconception about that, especially in Islam, but I do it in such a way where I understand meditation. I'm also certified in mindfulness and meditation in coaching. So we need to do that where it's an alignment. And there's like so many sort of techniques, but we need to have a balance, whereas our body,
I am so
just like
sorry.
with food, you need that balance.
We are
But
now,
also
we
is
are
having
now at
daily
the end of the
routine.
show.
So I manage because I do a lot, and the things I don't like, I
We
still
have
do.
now ended the
And
show.
that's what's important as well. You can't just do what you like all the time. You've got to also do things you don't like in order for it to all come
Thank
together.
you so much for your time this morning, Fahima. We have now actually come to the end of the show. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for your time.
I've been the voice of Anfield. So make sure you carry on listening to Inspire